We all know about tsunamis and landslides, but there are many rare and bizarre natural events that are so strange, it's sometimes hard to believe they actually happen on this planet. From a lake made out of acid to the most unbelievable type of rain you could ever imagine, here are 15 natural phenomena you should run away from. Red waves. Dust storms are very common in Australia. They are gigantic waves of suffocating red dust that move incredibly fast. Sounds scary, right? Well, they are, and quite destructive as well. There's a region in Australia that is the biggest dust generator of the entire southern hemisphere. That means that most of the dust down there is generated by this one region. But how does it become a dust storm? Well, because of strong winds. If the wind is strong enough, it can actually carry with it particles of silt, clay, and dust, and other tiny materials. That combined with a hot and dry climate, and bingo, you get dusty wind as a result, especially after a drought during the summer. And the waves have that scary and intimidating red color because the Australian desert has one of the highest contents of iron oxide in the world, which means the soil is already red. And that's how this cataclysmic event occurs almost every summer in Australia. This is definitely gonna make me rethink what time of the year I want to visit the continent. Florida frozen iguanas. A year ago, Floridians woke up to some very unusual and mysterious conditions one morning. There seemed to be frozen iguanas scattered across the streets everywhere in Florida. Did it rain iguanas overnight? Yes. The National Weather Service even had to issue a falling iguana warning the day before. Imagine that. Many residents of the Sunshine State rushed out to try and save the ones that seemed to still be alive. But why were they all dying like that? Well, iguanas are reptiles, which means they are cold-blooded animals and become completely paralyzed when temperatures approach 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And on that day, the temperature in Miami dropped to 40 degrees for the first time in 9 years. So the poor iguanas, being unable to hold onto the tree branches, simply all fell face first to the ground. But don't worry, as soon as the temperature rises again, our green little friends will just start moving again and be on their merry way. This phenomena has been dubbed as the iguana apocalypse, but beware. Even if iguanas are not aggressive creatures, when they warm up, they can become a little feisty, so it's recommended to leave them alone. Siberian permafrost explosions. When we think of the Siberian cold and unforgiving weather, we think about snow and ice ever present all year long. That's called permafrost, which basically means that the environment is naturally always frozen all the time. But what we don't usually link to cold weather is a massive explosion. Maybe because in our heads an explosion needs fire, and how can a place literally made out of ice burn? Well, there are other ways of creating explosions, and that is exactly what happened in Siberia. And this was no ordinary explosion. It was so insanely powerful that it could be heard from 60 miles away. It created a massive crater 13 feet wide and nearly 330 feet deep. And the culprit is the mischievous and highly explosive and flammable methane gas. Yeah, it turns out Siberia is sitting on top of a huge methane pocket, and from time to time, well, there are explosions, leaving massive scars on the surface of the forest and scaring the residents senseless. If you ever fancy a trip to Siberia, beware of the potentially deadly explosion right underneath you. Just saying. Most powerful tornado in history. There has never been a more cataclysmic, destructive, and extreme tornado than the Tri-State Tornado of March 18, 1925. It started in Illinois, United States, but quickly spread towards Missouri and Indiana. It has been considered as an F5 on the Fujita scale, even though at that time the scale didn't exist yet. This tornado holds the record for the longest path length at 210 miles, longest duration at around 3.5 hours, and fastest upward speed for a tornado that size at 73 miles per hour. It's also, to this date, the deadliest tornado in United States history. It claimed 695 lives in total. And also, it is ranked as the third costliest tornado ever as well. But the origin of this destruction seeker has yet to be determined almost a century later. Nobody really knows how it was formed or where it came from. But one thing is clear, nothing on its path was left standing. It annihilated everything it touched. The deadliest thing about this tornado is that it was surrounded by a very heavy cloud, so the farmers didn't realize that it was indeed a tornado until it was too late. BC Fire Tornado. So what looks like a tornado but is also in flames? Yeah, fire tornadoes exist, and they are extremely dangerous and destructive. It's basically a massive open flame that behaves like a tornado, so it is completely unpredictable and can travel a lot faster than an ordinary fire. I honestly can't imagine anything more terrifying. And when you try to combat it with the proper equipment, well, look for yourself. Because a fire tornado is exactly that, a fire caught up in a swirl of wind, it can suck things up just as efficiently as a tornado. That's what happened to these unfortunate firefighters in British Columbia when they were trying to extinguish the flame with their hose. The fire tornado literally pulled the hose 100+ feet into the air, and even with the best efforts of the firefighters to get it back, it was all in vain. And of course, the hose completely melted. I mean, it is fire after all. And not only that, but these horrifying things can also spit up objects. This one in particular was throwing burning logs for 45 minutes straight. Russia's deadliest heat wave. Heat waves have been part of our yearly summer events for quite some time now, but there has never been a more deadly one than the one that occurred in the summer of 2010. This event is called La Niña, which translates from Spanish as the girl, and the one that lasted from 2010 to 2011 was the strongest ever recorded. It caused severe heat waves and multiple record-breaking temperatures all across the northern hemisphere. The heat wave was particularly devastating in Russia, where, on average, the summer temperatures don't surpass 23 degrees Celsius, but in 2010, they reached a staggering 44 degrees. It caused drought, something that had not occurred in 40 years, and also 9 million hectares of crop were completely lost. Moscow recorded over 14,000 deaths. With temperatures so high, people in Russia were desperately seeking to cool off, and it's estimated that around 2,000 people drowned while swimming that year. Although the emergency ministry did say that 95% of those drowning had consumed alcohol. Great Lake ice tsunamis. How would you feel if a gigantic ice tsunami was happening on your doorstep? Terrified, right? Well, if that's the case, I do not recommend you to move to the Great Lakes in North America, because there, these ominous events happen pretty much every winter, and some of them are big enough to overwhelm lampposts and retaining walls. The ice tsunamis are basically created by a very strong wind that manages to, first of all, break the ice formed on the surface of the lakes, and then it blows it all to shore in one move. Some residents even found ice in their patios, and with a storm like that, it's no wonder they can have gusts of 60 miles an hour wind for several days. Strong enough to knock out the power and delay air travel. The ice blocks also end up in the middle of the road, making it impossible to drive through. Sometimes it can look like the lakes are spitting out broken glass. It might look mesmerizing, but let me assure you, it is extremely dangerous. And the piles of ice can get quite immense. Some of them can reach up to 16 feet tall. Frozen methane bubbles. Welcome to Abraham Lake, located in North Saskatchewan River in western Alberta, Canada. Something very special happens during the winter in this lake. The bottom of the lake naturally releases large quantities of methane gas, which is a highly flammable natural gas. And when the water starts freezing because of the cold weather of winter, all those methane bubbles that exist in the lake freeze with the rest of the water around them. But because they're essentially different than water at a molecular level, they have a very different appearance than the water, and therefore, they are visible. And not only are they visible even from the surface of the lake, but they are actually quite strikingly beautiful. So much so that images of Lake Abraham in winter have become viral, and today it's a very popular destination for photographers. But let's not forget that the lake's actually extremely dangerous. Once the methane gas is released, it's one of the most unstable elements out there. It can store 25 times more heat than carbon dioxide. So even if you're standing on top of a lake, you can very well burst into flames. Spider rain. Disclaimer, if you have a spider phobia, this video is not for you. But for the rest of you, did you know that spiders can actually fly? Yeah, I know, even if you're not arachnophobic, that's not something you necessarily want to hear, but it is true. They can actually manufacture a sort of flying device with their spider silk, and then let themselves be elevated with the wind. It almost sounds romantic, but when there are millions of spiders in the air floating around, trust me, it isn't. And that is exactly what happens in the Australian town of Goulburn, where every year they see coming an endless army of flying spiders that end up covering absolutely everything in spider webs. Before we continue, let's grab an umbrella. The spiders actually do this to migrate. They send out their spider webs into the air to catch the wind, and off they go. The thing is, they all do it at the same time, and there are lots of them. This kind of event happens mainly in Australia, but it's also been reported in Texas and in Brazil. So yeah, spider rain is real, and not only that, it is spreading. Maine spinning ice disk. Finally, news from Maine, United States has become viral. Let me present to you the spinning ice disk, which is exactly what it sounds like, a gigantic disc made out of ice that spins. It's so unique and mesmerizing though that some people are convinced it is either the dark side of the moon or that it was brought to Earth by aliens. But let me assure you, the spinning ice disk is very much terrestrial and a natural phenomenon. It was formed in the Presumpcot River in Portland and is a whopping 300 feet wide. And reportedly, it was spinning for all of 72 hours before it stopped on its own. And the explanation's quite simple. The rotation of the ice disk comes from the movement of the water underneath, and also from the temperature changes around the ice, which creates a vortex that causes the movement. But nevertheless, these frozen pizza-shaped ice blocks are incredibly rare. They only happen once and sometimes twice a winter. But this is the first one of this massive size. Lake Nyos disaster. This is the story of a perfectly ordinary lake that became the biggest serial killer in history. Yeah, I know a lake can't be a serial killer, but let me explain. On August 21st, 1986, one of the most unexplainable and destructive natural disasters took place at Lake Nyos that's located in northwest Cameroon in Africa. One morning, when the residents of the village next to the lake woke up, they became absolutely baffled at the sight of every farm animal in the vicinity having died during the night. But they would soon discover that it was much worse than that. What had happened was that, without any kind of warning, the lake had released hundreds of thousands of tons of toxic carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It was estimated at 1 million tons of the gas, creating a deadly cloud that spread over the countryside and that actually managed to suffocate in their sleep over 1,700 people and more than 3,500 livestock as well. Imagine the horror of waking up one day and seeing death all around you everywhere you look. The fact that the carbon dioxide is a silent killer makes the severity of this event all the more creepy and terrifying. Volcanic Lightning. Yeah, there is such a thing as lightning in a volcano, and it is terrifying. Let's put aside the fact that a volcanic eruption is by far one of the most powerful, cataclysmic, destructive, and amazing natural phenomena of this Earth. Now, they also come with lightning. When lightning's added to the mix of the already breathtaking volcanic eruption, the result is absolutely spectacular, maybe even one of the most striking events known to man. The science behind volcanic lightning has been under debate for years now, and it's still not fully understood. But what we do know is that it isn't as simple as a lightning strike coming from the sky, rather, they are created from fire and ice within the volcano itself. When an eruption's taking place, the volcano spits a massive cloud of particles into the air, and if the temperatures are below 4 degrees Fahrenheit, the particles quickly freeze, and when they start colliding with one another, this creates a strong electric charge. When this happens, the positively charged particles naturally separate themselves from the one with a negative charge. And when they get far enough away from each other, bang! Lightning is created. And that is how these mesmerizing but extremely dangerous events take place. East African Locust Infestation. This past year or so hasn't been easy for anyone. Well, except for Jeff Bezos, I guess, but for the rest of us, it's been very trying. And especially for the people of the Greater Horn of Africa, that after fighting the virus and a terrible drought, now they're being invaded by a very destructive plague. A locust infestation. It's happening mainly in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia, and it's posing a serious threat to the food security and livelihood of the region, especially as they approach towards the main agricultural season. The billions of locusts that keep breeding in those lands are eating absolutely everything in their path. Hundreds of thousands of hectares of crop and pasture have already been affected by the locust infestation. It's not for nothing that this was one of the 10 plagues of Egypt that God released out of rage towards the Egyptian pharaoh. And in regions where food is scarce, something this devastating can often lead to conflict amongst the residents. After the trying times the world has had lately, this really could be the last straw that breaks the camel's back. Blue Lava Acid Lake. The Kawah Ijen volcano is located on the island of Java in Indonesia, and it has the particularity of displaying two of the most bizarre and unique occurrences on the planet Earth. First of all, the volcano there is not your ordinary one. This one is an active sulfatora, which means that it emits hot, flammable, sulfurous gases. And when the sulfuric gas comes into contact with the Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere, it starts burning with an electric blue flame. This blue flame is invisible during daylight, but at night it illuminates the landscape and can be quite mesmerizing. Then, on the other hand, we have the most bizarre lake in the world. There's the fact that the waters are bright turquoise, but how? The surreal color of this lake is due to its extreme acidity and high concentration of dissolved metals, making it the largest highly acidic lake. It is so acidic that if you drop a piece of bone in there, it will instantly start fizzling and dissolving in the water. So yeah, do not jump into this lake. The water would literally burn your skin within seconds. And of course, no life can exist around the area, not even plants. It's hard to believe that there are places on this earth where life can't thrive. The Saltstraumen Maelstrom. This tiny little strait located in Norway might not look like much, but in reality, it has one of the strongest tidal currents in the world. And because of the size and power of the currents, it is the perfect environment for maelstroms to form. A maelstrom is no more than an extremely powerful whirlpool that can crush instantly any boat that has the misfortune of coming too close. Think if a black hole was in water. It's estimated that 400 million tons of seawater force their way through a 3-kilometer long and 150-meter wide teeny tiny strait every 6 hours. The water there can reach speeds of 37 kilometers per hour. Because of the aggressive manner of how the water needs to push through, vortices are created, and some of them can reach 10 meters in diameter and 5 meters deep. Lots of people go missing every year due to the violent maelstroms in Norway. Boats can only cross the strait at specific times of the year, and a calendar is issued to let people know when it's safe. As you can see, this planet of ours isn't devoid of dangerous, yet exciting and interesting places. If you could be sure to stay completely safe, which one of the places or phenomena on this list would you want to see? Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time!